with Peruvians, if somebody offers you food in their home, it is really, really hard to say no. Because down there, saying no when somebody offers you food is like one of the most offensive things you can possibly do. If somebody, like, and this, it's really sad too, because these families, like a lot of them, they won't have all that much food in the first place. This is a very poor culture as well. You'll see people well off, you'll see people who are doing well, but you also see a lot of poor people who are just barely scraping by, who are just barely trying to get through all this stuff, and like it's sad, and yet here they are. They will offer you food. It doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, you know, as if they're decent people, like whether they're interested in the church or not, whatever, they will always offer you food because that's customary. That's what you do. But as missionaries, of course, we're restricted in what we actually can accept to eat down there because the water is really not that clean. The water has a lot of issues. If you're going to be drinking the water, it either needs to have been boiled and prepared in the pension, or it needs to have been filtered, or just bought in bottles. Because if you're just drinking tap water and things just like that, it can be fairly bad for you, and it can cause a lot of problems. And if things aren't cooked properly, which a lot of people down there don't realize that, because a lot of us are foreigners and a lot of us are from outside the country, even if we're just like from nearby countries, going there, eating the food, which can be prepared a bit badly with microorganisms, with spices, with other things that we're not used to, we can get really sick. Which is why it is a rule in the missions down there that you're not supposed to accept food just from anybody, or under a lot of circumstances where they cooked it. But for the most part, they won't know that. And they will offer you food. And it is so hard to explain to them that I cannot eat your food, because they will get offended, they will be sad, and a lot of them will probably just be sitting here thinking, oh, those Mormon missionaries are so rude. They said no to my food. They don't want to eat my food. They must not like me. Jerks. You know, so at Culture, that's something that, especially for the missionary work, which you will have to note when you go there, is that you have to be careful how you approach that situation, because we want to be obedient to the rules, but we don't want to offend them either. And a lot of times you're going to have to make some very hard decisions under that circumstances. There were times when I ate the food, quite frankly, because I really didn't want them to feel bad. And then there were other times where I refused to eat the food, but I tried to explain to them why I couldn't eat the food, but I think they still got offended. And some of them were members who knew better. But you will just have to make some decisions in those moments and decide what is going to be better here. And that's kind of a moment when you also have to sit and go, okay, you know, Heavenly Father, do I eat the food? Should I eat the food, or should I be more obedient? And you will have to make that decision yourself to the rule. And I won't judge anybody also who eats the food either, because quite frankly I did it, and it's hard to say no. Let's see, culturally, other things to note with Peruvians. A lot of them are generally fairly happy people. There's a lot of drinking there, just be warned of that. Trying to think, there's a lot of fun things that they do too. Like they've got a really rich culture as far as dances and customs go. And for example, in Huancayo, it's just the Huancayo, which is in the province of Junín itself. You will find tons of different traditional dances that they do. One of the more common, for example, is called Wailash. And it's hard to explain exactly the dance, but the ladies have these cool, extremely like detailed skirts, which they've had all just prepared and everything like that. The guys will have on the vests, and they'll just do this really cool dance, which is really, it's cool. It's hard to explain it other than that. I would suggest looking it up on the internet if you want to see a little bit more of it, but that one's a cool tradition, something that I really liked. But then they've also got all these other like dances and other celebrations which they'll be doing. I'll give you a really cool example of one in Huánuco. Huánuco, just that little city to the north, has this celebration during Christmas. It's based on a Catholic tradition of worshiping the baby Jesus, in which they will worship the baby Jesus, so they do it around Christmas. But it's called Los Negritos, El Baile de los Negritos. It's, in English that would be translated the black people dance. But what it is it's actually harkens back to days when Huánuco, with a lot of the mines that were around it, a lot of the lords and ladies of the land lords and ladies of the land, I say. They still deal with a bit of that kind of an idea. But a lot of those mine owners and the owners would bring in slaves, of course, to do a lot of that work for them. So they bring in a lot of people from Africa and from areas like that to start working in these mines. And a lot of times that was very hard for them. I mean, they had the taskmasters in the mines, some of the foremen who would be, of course, like with the whips and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And according to the tradition, what these slaves then would do, the one thing that they could do to help relieve some of that stress of being in that slavery, being in that situation, was they would dance. And what they would do is they would prepare their costumes, and they would do it specifically on the celebration of the baby Jesus, and they would do a dance. Well, that started converting into an actual tradition, which now is just fully present in Wanako today. And what they do is they prepare these like extremely detailed costumes, honestly. And they make these like masks. They've got some black ones for the negritos, the slaves. They've got these white bearded ones for the Spanish foremen of the mines. The white bearded guys, there's like 2 of them within the dance who basically just go around making mischief with noisemakers and cracking little whips and just being silly generally. And then, of course, during the dance, you have the Lord and the Lady, who are the owners of the mine, who would also appear during the dance. You just have a bunch of the negritos, and the costumes for this are honestly ridiculously elaborate. And they've got this thing attached to these huge wide-brimmed hats that they're wearing on top of these masks, which just goes up, and it's just covered with these different rows of feathers. Like, I swear they just use feather dusters for it, but they can, because that's kind of the look they're going for, and it just kind of goes up like that. And then they'll do this dance every Christmas. The streets just fill up with guys doing this dance. Guys and girls dressed up in these costumes, doing this traditional dance. And during Christmas, it's very hard to get around Wanako just because everywhere, it's everywhere there. And I almost got to see it in person. Almost, if they hadn't transferred me the week before Christmas to the jungle, which for me was kind of sad because I really did want to see it. But I got to see people start doing it like sporadically around Wanako, because they would just do it also as the Christmas season got closer. For me, that was kind of like a really cool tradition as far as the dance and the customs go. And it was a Catholic tradition, which is a little bit awkward again because we don't worship the saints, and we don't worship like the different images of Christ that the Catholic Church worships. But as far as respecting their culture and acknowledging that this is something that they've put into their culture and their tradition, especially in that area, it was a really cool experience to see. And you'll see things like that anywhere in Peru. Like in the jungles, they've got some dance traditions, of course, too. In the jungles, you'll also find the indigenous tribal people's traditions, which is really cool to see as well. And there's a lot of things like that, honestly, just everywhere you go. And it's a really cool tradition to participate in as far as their culture is. We didn't really participate in it, I should say, but to get to be a part of, watch it. When you get to Peru, you will see a lot of Catholic traditions because Peru has been primarily Catholic, as a lot of other South American countries. So you will see a lot of Catholic traditions when you get down there. Like you'll see the celebrations for the saints, a lot of things like that. And some of them you might kind of look at, especially as members of the church. We might look at it that kind of like you know, but and maybe we're not in agreement with what they do, but that's one of the things that when you go there you have to learn how to respect, because it means a lot to a lot of people down there. It even actually means a bit to some of the members who are still new and who are still adjusting to the idea that, well, we don't really worship saints, we worship Jesus Christ. And that's one of the things you will have to deal with as you get there, as far as the culture goes and traditions. The music in Peru is really good. You will find a lot of really good kinds of music, and they've got a lot of different Latin genres there that you'll also hear. On the radio, of course, they'll pull music from the States. You'll hear English music, you'll hear Spanish music, you'll hear things like that. But if you go for the traditional musics from Peru itself, the ones that I enjoyed most, at least, would be like cumbia, which is kind of a nice, kind of fast-paced dance music, which is more honestly of just Latin in general, but they've got their kind of cumbia there in Peru. As for something that's very specific to Peru, and I will warn you, you have to be very careful with this music. It's called huayno. And for me, I personally don't like it, being completely honest. It's a very repetitive music that they do, and they'll do dances to it too. I heard it many times when we passed by celebrations of people in the streets. But it is extremely repetitive. And they also will sing it in a manner that's kind of pitchy, I will say. They're kind of going up and down and up and down and up and down, and you're kind of sitting there going, okay, trying to be open-minded, okay. What really did me in for this one was one time my companion and I, we were heading to a leadership conference with all the zone leaders and the sister leaders in the mission. And we got on this bus that went from Cerro de Pasco to Huancayo that took about 6 hours, and the entire drive, this was all they were playing, was just this music, just constantly. And then what made it worse was they had this food called tokush, which is these potatoes that they let rot for 6 months in water, then they dry it out and they'll make puddings and things out of it. It's gross. That's one of the foods that's banned, thankfully, from our mission. But they had tons of it just on the bottom side of this bus. So we had that smell wafting up to us, mixed in with this repetitive wino music, which sounded a bit like shouting and a bit of shouting, I'll just say, in the music. And it was just, by the end of those 6 hours, we were both just like this. Please make it stop. Please make it stop. So for both of us, we don't really have that high of an opinion of wino anymore, just because we had that experience. They do have some wino that's good. I liked, there's a few examples of wino that I would say, this is a really good example of what wino should be and what it would sound like. If they all sang it like this, I would love it. It can be a really good music. But because a lot of them will sing it in these other ways, and it sounds a little bit dissonant and a little bit kind of just like a bit rushed and very repetitive, you might get kind of tired of it like I have. That's the only music I would complain about in Peru, though. The rest of the music, honestly, is really good. I especially like listening to the music andina, which isn't just in Peru, that's in all the Andes mountains, but they use the pan pipes and they'll use like the natural flutes, and a lot of those things are really cool to listen to, and I really enjoyed those.
I think the Latin culture in general has a very loving, embracing type of personality, you know? And they're just always just hugging you, and they just give you the kiss on the cheek, and it's great. It's this so warm and loving. In the area that I was in, specifically in Lima, it's a dangerous area, and so a lot of the homes are barred or gated or with 5 locksmith locks, and it's just very, very kind of a lot of people are very closed when it comes to safety. And so typically, I mean, to be honest, we didn't knock on a lot of doors because it's hard to even just get past them. They don't even open the front door, you know, and our mission president would suggest us to do in several other ways by contacting and working through members and less actives and stuff. But it's a very kind of a closed community, I guess you could say. It's different from the providences in Peru, where people are outside and they're just talking, and you know, it's a different lifestyle. And it's a little bit more of a safer environment, I guess you could say. But inside of Lima, to be honest, I mean, there's a lot of robbing and stealing. I mean, I don't want to scare anybody that's going there, but it is the truth. You do have to be careful, and it is kind of closed. However, the moment, I mean, when you knock on the door, they don't even come out their front door. They like come out their window and they're just like, who is it? You know? And it's funny. I thought it was the funniest thing, or I thought it was the weirdest thing when I first was there. I was like, why doesn't anybody open their door? How rude. They just come out of their windows all the time. I don't understand this. And so, but then I understood that it was because a lot of people are afraid, and because there's a lot of things that will happen. So anyways, but the moment that you can gain their trust, if you can just talk to them through the window, or if you can talk to them through having a member there who knows them, or there's so many different ways that you can do it to gain the trust of a Peruvian inside the center city of Lima. But once you've gained that trust, they embrace you. I mean, they just embrace you, and you feel so loved. It's like I just have a family down there. I really do. I'd love to go back down there, and I know that I would just be received in open arms and taken care of, because the people just love. I mean, their capacity to love is so big. And so really it's just a matter of just getting past the trust wall that is just made there just because of the nature of the city. Once you get past that, the people are absolutely amazing, and they're super, super kind. So anyways, that's a little bit about the people. They're very, very family oriented, super family oriented. And I think a lot, I mean, there's a lot of families or a lot of places in the world that are, but I just feel like I mean, you go to a house and this is really normal. I mean, you knock on the bottom door and it's probably like the mom and dad. And then upstairs is their first kid, and then above that's their second kid, and above that's their third kid, and the fourth kid, and all their families. And it's just like when you move out, you just move upstairs, or you build another layer on top of your house, or you're living right next door, or you're living right behind. That's really, really normal, is that they will stick very close to each other. And that's really neat to see how close they are and how actively involved they are in each other's lives. I feel like it is I don't know, I feel like we're probably used to a very fast-paced lifestyle, and it's a little bit more of a slower paced and kind of just like breathe in and take in the moment a little, and their lunch is very important to them. And it's different because, oh yeah, this is something very interesting that I had to get used to, is that we'll eat dinner as our main meal. I mean, you come home and you eat together, and that's, kind of the typical family dinner is that. And then you have a big meal. But there it's actually for lunch. And so for breakfast, you'll eat something really small. And then for lunch, a lot of shops will close down, or a lot of people will go home, and you'll have lunch together. And lunch will be from 1 to 3. This isn't just, let's grab a sandwich and a soup or something. I mean, you have like a family dinner, but it's family lunch, I guess you could say. And you just eat, and you just have a good lunch. Now, obviously, for missionaries, it's different. We get in and out, and we go back to work, But it's interesting because a lot of times during 1 and 3, you could find a lot of families at home, because that's just it's the lunch hour. And so I think it was a little bit less in that area, because it is the middle of the city, and so there's a lot of people who are working, who go out to the middle of the city, and they're working a lot of professional jobs. But that is the culture of Peru, and really the culture of a lot of South America is that lunch is the main meal. And I did find that very often. We would eat big lunches, and then for dinner we'd have like a bread, like a couple pieces of toast, and like some hot chocolate, or just something really simple, some fruit or cereal or something like that. We would just go back to our apartment and just eat something simple. And so anyways, that was kind of a culture difference that I had to get used to. In the middle of the day, you're so full, and then you have to go out walking. You're just like, oh my word! But it's great because you burn all the calories after you eat them all. You get home and you barely eat anything, go to bed. It's such a healthy way to like live and eat. It's great. So, anyways, that was something kind of different that I hadn't known. So yeah.
The culture, I think one of the first things I noticed was that the people were so humble and so willing to give. I remember when I left an area that I'd been in for 9 months, and I was going to say goodbye to a few members and some people. It's like, I remember so many of them running to the back of their homes and grabbing things, just anything to give me to remember them. So I have this collection now of like half-used bottles of perfume and a little Christmas stocking that I got in the middle of June, some earrings, some clothes. I remember one member gave me sunscreen and just all these things. And I think at the beginning of my mission, had I received those gifts, I would have thought that it was kind of strange. But by that point, I was just so touched because they were willing to give me anything they had. And there were other times when we'd go somewhere to eat and there wouldn't be enough stools, but they'd make sure that the missionaries had a place to sit, and they'd stand, or sometimes they wouldn't eat and they'd just let us eat all that they had. And I was so touched by that. I remember one of the best meals I ever ate in my mission was served in this tarp hut without even a roof. It was just basically like a square tarp and open under the sky, and I was eating there, and it was so delicious. And it was one of the things they weren't eating. They were standing and watching us, and then as we talked to them, they started talking about how they'd been robbed, they'd lost everything recently. And as the brother drove us home in his motorcar, we said that we'd pray for him that things could get better, and he said, "Sister, things are already better. I had the missionaries in my house today." And it was just so humbling to be with those type of people. I just remember a lot of primary children that would get up to primary children that when they would get up to bear their testimony, there's kind of like those stereotypical lines that lots of little kids say, like, I know the church is true, I know I know that the prophet is the prophet of God, and all these things. And one line that a lot of the primary children would say every time they bore their testimony was, I know that missionaries are angels sent from God. And it's just such a blessing to be with people that are that way and that love you that much, even when they don't know you. They're a very loving culture. When the women greet each other, it's very customary that they'll give each other a kiss on the cheek. And when I first got there, I was not a touchy person. I remember going into the first house and this woman just like kisses me straight on the cheek, and I kind of jumped back, and I was very scared. And by the end of my mission, I was very much that way. I loved it. I love that culture of just strangers that you've never met. You greet them with a kiss and you basically learn to love them right away and treat them like family. And that's the thing that I love most about the culture.
One thing that I love about Peruvian culture, and I think it's South American culture in general, is just how open they are and willing they are to be close with one another. And I think that is seen by the kissing on the cheek. Every time we met someone new, we would kiss them on the cheek. Well, so because we were sister missionaries, it could only be between sisters. Men, we just shook their hands and everything. But every time we met someone new, we would kiss them on the cheek, just like, hola, hermana. And I love that because I think it just shows how willing they are to be open one with another and to become friendly quickly. And that is something that you can definitely see in their culture, just how friendly they are with everyone and with their neighbors and with their families and everything. They're very much an open people. They will let anyone into their home, and they keep their front doors open, and they are just very loving, and that is felt. That's something that I love about Peruvian culture. So some of my favorite Peruvian foods, there's something called pollo a la brasa, which it literally is just like rotisserie chicken served with like French fries and salad. And so when I got to the mission and someone told me, like, everyone was so excited that, like, oh my gosh, I'm at a beauty cover, we're going to eat pollo a la brasa tonight. And I'd just be like, and I was like, getting excited too, like, awesome, what is pollo a la brasa? And then we like had dinner that night and I saw that it was just rotisserie chicken and French fries. And I was just like, why is everyone so excited about this? It's just like chicken and French fries. And so that's what I thought, like, the first time I had pollo a la brasa. But by the end of my mission, I loved pollo a la brasa, and I got just as excited as everyone else. Like, oh my gosh, we're having pollo a la brasa. Pollo a la brasa is the best. And I just think that's just something funny how, like, at the beginning of my mission, I thought it was, like, so normal. But, like, by the end of my mission, I was just like everyone else, like, getting super excited about how great pollo a la brasa is. Let's see. Another food that I really liked was they have things called papa rellena, and it's like, which means like refilled potato. So it's like they have like mashed potatoes, sort of. It's like also mixed with flour. And then they like spread it out like on a sheet or something, or like on the table, and they put like meat and vegetables and stuff into it, and then they like refold the mashed potatoes over like the stuffing that they've put inside, and then they like deep fry it. And so then you get out this like deep fried ball of mashed potatoes with like meat and stuff on the inside. And that was like my favorite like thing to have for dinner like all the time. I just like really liked that. Another thing that I really liked was called gosh, I'm forgetting what it's called. But it's grilled cow heart. And we would, one of my companions in my last area, there was a lady around the corner who sold, she like grilled cow heart outside every single night. And she would like get like a slab of like cow heart, and she would like cut it open like all juicy and everything. Then she would like pour some like spices and oil and like ají and everything. And then she would like grill it, and then she would stick like 3 or 4 pieces on like a kebab. And then she would sell it to you for like 2 soles, which is like not even like $1. And so like every night, when we were walking back to our apartment, we would stop and buy this cow heart on a kebab. and we would like eat it as we like didn't like planning at night and everything. And so that was one of my favorite foods too. Like one of my favorite snacks was buying the cow heart kebabs. It was yummy. Some of my other favorite snacks, they have these things called besos de moza. It's a beso de moza, which means lady's kiss. And they're like, it's like a little cookie graham cracker sort of thing with like marshmallow cream stuff sitting on top of it. And then it's all like covered in chocolate, like it was dipped in chocolate. And so it's just like a little chocolate round thing with like creamy marshmallow fluff, like sitting on a cookie. And it's called a beso de moza, and they are amazing. Like, they are so good. I would find, they have tienditas, like una tienda, which are just like little like storefronts. Like a lady like opens up her front door and just like starts selling like sodas and water and candy and food and stuff like that. Anyway, and so you could just like find any tienda on like any corner, and they would have a bunch of stuff. And so I used to like pinpoint in all my areas. I used to pinpoint like that's the best tienda in town because they have besos de moza and they have like my favorite candies and everything all the time. But it was always dependent on whether or not they had a constant supply of beso de moza. If that store was good or not, if that tienda was good or not. Anyway, so that's something funny. I love besos de moza. And then they also have a really yummy chocolate bar called a princesa. It's just dark chocolate with peanut butter. It's like a layer of dark chocolate, a layer of peanut butter, and then a layer of dark chocolate. And it's like a princesa bar. And it's just like so good. Like seriously so good. Those were like my favorite candy bars as well. Anyway, so yeah, the beso de moza and the princesa are my two favorite Peruvian candies and sweets and everything. They also have this amazing fruit. Oh my gosh. Like Peru has amazing fruit all the time. Like just a huge variety of all sorts of things that you've never seen in America. Super colorful, super yummy, super juicy, super healthy. And oh my gosh, like people would just walk around with huge carts just piled with fruit. And so me and my companion would be like walking down the street and we'd be like, do you want a snack? And she'd be like, yeah, I want a snack. And then we would just like stop the guy and buy some fruit. And it was great. We would buy kiwi, we would buy like pineapple, we would buy like all this stuff and just eat it like in the street. And it was great. But my favorite fruit of all time is called a granadilla. And from what I've heard, it's related to a pomegranate. So, like, think of how, like, you open up a pomegranate and, like, the seeds are, like, stuck in there. A granadilla is kind of like that, except you open it up, you, like, crack it open, and it's just, like, a juicy mush of, like, seeds and juice. And so it, like, honestly, the first time I saw one, I thought the inside of it was rotten because it literally looks like maggots or something, because it's just like these seeds like floating in like this juicy mush. So it looks kind of gross on the inside, but all you have to do, you just crack it open and then you like suck it out, and then you like suck the seeds, and you don't chew the seeds, you swallow them whole. So all you do is just like you suck the juice and then swallow the seeds, and it's just so good and so sweet and so refreshing. And granadillas are my favorite fruit ever, and it's tragic that they don't have them in America. Some crazy foods that they eat in Peru, they eat guinea pig there. The rumors that you've heard are true. They do eat guinea pig, and I had it a couple times, not many, but it really wasn't that bad. I think it's something good that everyone should try. Like, everyone should have that experience because it's not terrible and you'll survive. And it was good, good enough to try at least once. But what's really interesting is that they take a guinea pig, like a furry, little baby, pet guinea pig practically. And they like, kill it however they do. And they skin it, and then they like stick the whole thing in like a vat of oil. And so it's just like a deep fried guinea pig. And then it comes on your plate, like, the whole thing, like, toenails and teeth and eyes and all. Like, the head, the body, the whole thing. And you just, like, cut it open and, like, eat off its little rib or its feet, or you can chop off its head, like, stuff like that. So they just, like, deep fry the whole guinea pig and serve it to you. So, yeah, I had it. It was pretty good. It tastes kind of like greasy chicken, sort of. But it's a delicacy there, and everyone loves it, and they all talk about how good it is, and it was good. It was good to try, so I recommend it. And then another thing that they also eat, especially on the mountains, these things didn't happen so often on the coast, but out in like the Andes and the mountains, they eat alpaca. And so I had that, and alpaca was actually really yummy. It was like actually really good. The meat was like super soft and super like tender, and it tasted like beef. It tasted like good beef. It was yummy. So alpaca was really good too. Kind of sad thinking of a cute alpaca, getting eaten, but it was really good. So those were probably the craziest things that I ate. A traditional food of the north and of the Peruvian coast is something called ceviche, and it's raw fish that is cooked in lemon juice. And so it's not raw anymore because it's been like cooked in lemon juice, and somehow that does it. I'm not really sure exactly how it works. But that is a specialty, and everyone loves ceviche. We as missionaries aren't allowed to eat it most of the time. I did try it a couple times. I'm not a huge fish person. I'm not really into seafood, but it was good. It was good. It was yummy. And they do it with all types. They do it with like octopus. They do it with fish and different types of fish. And then they also do like chicken ceviche. So instead of doing the fish, they do chicken. And it was good.
And something funny, too, about their culture is, it's not wrong or anything, but something I heard before my mission, and I don't know if it was true or not, but I heard that they find it really disrespectful if you throw things. And I guess that makes sense, because it's like if you have something, you want to treat it with respect. But like, I remember one time, I think it was like keys that I had to our room, and so, like I tossed them on my bed or something, and my companion looked at me, and she was from Peru, and she was like, "Did you just do that?" And I was like, "Oh," because I had forgot that they, that's kind of a big thing, that you don't just throw things around, like you treat the things that you have with respect. So that's just a little thing that I thought was funny, that, just be careful with things you have. Like if you're going to give it something to someone, just hand it to them, like don't toss it, because they might think that's disrespectful. And something really cool too about their culture is, especially in Maraz, a lot of people spoke a language called Quechua, and I was told that that was the language that the Incas spoke, and so I was able to learn just a few words, a few phrases here and there, but I wish I would have been able to learn a little bit more, because that would have been really cool to, connect more with their culture, but to, be more connected to the Incas, because that was, the sense of the Lamanites. So I think that if anyone going there that has a chance to learn that language, that would be really cool. I would suggest that they take an interest in learning that. And that can help you connect with the people too, because that's part of their culture and who they are. So definitely I would suggest, if you go there, ask the people about their history, about legends that they have about the language, and that would definitely help them see you as a person, not just some American who's trying to convert them to their church. And so definitely I would do that. The food in Peru is really good. I was a little nervous before I went, because I thought it just would be weird things I'd never had before that I would always have to eat, but it was actually really good. Mostly what Peruvians eat will be, you're going to eat rice probably every day, and that was fine. I didn't have a problem with that, but it'll be normally rice and chicken, some sort of chicken, and then potatoes too. They'll normally put all of those together, and sometimes like when they would give us like some kind of pasta dish, they would put rice with that too. So definitely you're gonna get your fill of rice, but it's not really on its own. The food isn't really spicy, but they make like this different ají sauces that are really spicy that you can put on. So if you're into that, then great, you can put them on, but if not, then you should be good with most of the food. And some of my favorites were the tallarines saltados, and also the ají de gallina, and there was one more thing I forgot. Oh, there's so many things, like just different variations on
chicken and rice. It's really good. So definitely enjoy the food while you can, because I've tried a few restaurants here in Utah that are Peruvian restaurants, and they're pretty good, but just nothing is like the cooking down there. So definitely take advantage of that while you're down there, because it won't be the same when you come back. But there is one thing that was really interesting that I am glad I had the opportunity to try. It's called cuy. I hope I say it right, but it's guinea pig, but that's actually like a really popular thing that they eat down there. And they thought, because I was explaining to them one time that is like, well, in America, a guinea pig is a pet, and they're like, really? They thought that was weird. But it's like, if you get the chance to try it, like, don't be afraid. Like, I mean, it is kind of weird because they just fry it, like they take everything out, they skin it and take everything out, but when they fry it, like, you see the outline of the guinea pig, but other than that, like, it was actually really good. There's not very much meat to it, but it was really good. So definitely, if you get the chance to try it, definitely do it, because it's a cool experience, but it's really good. And also, another really popular dish from Peru that I love is called ceviche. And we actually weren't allowed to have it until the end of our mission. That probably differs with all the missions in Peru, but it's what it is. It's raw fish, but then you cook it with lime juice, and then they put onions and different things on it, and it's really good. It's better than it sounds, so definitely, if you have the opportunity to try that, I definitely do that as well. That's one of the most popular dishes that you'll see in Peru. And people might try to offer it to you, and it was hard because, like, it was a rule in our mission that we weren't able to have it, mostly because they would sell it on the street a lot, and so just with sanitary things, like, they didn't want us to get sick. But if they do try to offer it to you, like I said, just explain the rules that you're not able to, but definitely at the end of your mission, or if you go back, definitely take the opportunity to try it, because it is so good.
The people of Peru are wonderful. They are very family oriented. Family is the most important thing to them. It's not uncommon to see parents, children, grandparents living in the same household with kids all there. So family is the number one priority. They really value friends. Like, people get really attached to the missionaries, and they love having the missionaries over to teach them. The kids love having the missionaries over, and if you can be friends with them and teach them the principles of the gospel and have fun and get to know them, they will accept you with open arms, and they get very attached to you. They will love you. They will miss you when you leave the area. They will write to you. Peruvians are super funny. We had a lot of fun with them. They love pranks. Like, they love jokes. I mean, everything from getting an egg cracked on your head on your birthday, which happened to me, and it wasn't my birthday, so I wasn't too happy, but I've seen it. And also water balloon fights in the middle of the summer. They have huge water carnivals. They call them carnaval in February. They like to have a really good time, and you'll notice that on the weekends, everyone has a humongous stereo system, and they're all blasting music. Also, they're very believing people. They have a strong conviction of the Lord. They have a strong faith in Jesus Christ. They believe in God and that He is their Father. And this goes for, obviously, the members and for the non-members and the people you just meet on a day-to-day basis. They are they're easy to love, and you should do everything you can to love them and to serve them, because they love you, and they will follow the Lord, and they do it really well. You eat the food. Like I said, the Peruvian food's delicious, and you should like their dishes, and they're very good. But be very respectful and grateful for when you receive a plate of food from them, especially when you're having your 3 meals a day at your pensionist's house. Just be very grateful and eat the food and enjoy it, and try not to be too picky, which might be hard for some missionaries. We all want to eat food that we like, and like I said, you should like the food down there. It's really good. But if they're serving ají de pollo, ají de gallina that day, or whatever it may be, eat the food. Do your best to enjoy it and to be really appreciative of what they give you, because they they like to serve you. Like they will give you food, they will give you soda to drink, and they're great, and they're very their hospitality is great. They just want to treat you well. So eat the food. I think you've heard of this as a prospective missionary about a ton of missions, right? You eat the food and you enjoy it. Social dues, like any culture, be respectful and mindful. I think the great thing about Peru is that it wasn't too foreign feeling to me. It felt like home. I'm Hispanic. My parents are from Mexico. I spoke the language. I felt right in. People are different. You'll see tons of people. You'll see indigenous people. You'll hear indigenous music. You'll hear Spanish music. You'll hear lots of salsa. You'll hear lots of reggaeton. But overall, I don't think it's too vastly different. So I know that their Independence Day is July 28th, and that's huge. Like it would be anywhere else, which is a holiday. They do have a lot of holiday actually. About once a month, something is happening, and classes are canceled. One goes to work, so count on it. Like once a month, kids will be at home and not at school. But they celebrate Christmas. They are starting to celebrate Halloween more and more. They do celebrate Christmas a little bit differently. We're kind of used to here in the United States waking up Christmas morning to a nice, quiet, tranquil morning, and then opening presents. Over there, they stay up Christmas Eve until midnight. They have a big dinner Christmas Eve, and then once midnight hits, it goes crazy. It goes ballistic. It looks like the 4th of July here, except times a million, because everyone is launching fireworks. Everyone's making noise or burning things, and so it's actually really fun. Christmas is really fun. That's how New Year's Eve and New Year's Day is over there as well. So you kind of get like the same kind of atmosphere a week apart. Most of our mission was in the city of Lima, in the northwest area of the city, and so people work a ton, especially the men. Men go out and they work, and they're working, all day. It felt like always they were just out. The women stay home and they attend their duties at home. They cook and clean, and they kind of just prepare for lunch, which is the biggest meal of the day. So a lot of the day revolves around lunch, because that's when people get their biggest break from work and they eat. When I first got to Lima, it's a big city, so I think sometimes people were just kind of tending to where they needed to go, what they needed to do. I think people were just, like, for instance, when we were on the buses or in public transportation, you can do good contacting by those means. People will talk to you. They're nice. They're just nice people. But sometimes I think that in a big city where people are busy and trying to get places, they don't always have time. But, once you get into more rural areas, which I was able to serve in, you can go door-to-door knocking a little bit easier. And
something else with the culture, everybody buys their food daily for the most part. And so there's people selling different food groups all the time going down the streets, and they all have their own calls. There are people who sell fruit. They often have a large bike with like a trailer on the front of the bike, which is loaded with fruit. And then they have a little speakerphone, and for some reason they all sound the exact same. Like every single person who sells fruit sounds the same. And they just kind of talk into their little speakerphone, yelling what kind of fruit they have, whether it's watermelon, mangoes, granadilla, grapes, bananas, anything that they have. They just kind of announce their wares through their speakerphone and ride their bike through the streets. And if you needed fruit that day, you'd go out and you'd stop the guy and you'd pay him for the fruit, and you'd take the fruit inside and you'd use that for that day's meals. Same with bread. They walk around with a big basket of bread and they yell out, usually without a microphone. They just yell what bread they were selling. They sold fresh bread early in the morning. You'd hear them at about 6 o'clock, sometimes earlier, that they're selling the fresh bread. You have the guy that goes down the street to sharpen all of your kitchen utensils, your knives, or cleavers, anything that you were using for your meats or vegetables that you needed sharpened, or even scissors. He had this little pan pipes, and he'd blow up the pan pipes and back down the pan pipes, kind of like a and you just knew that was the guy that would sharpen your tools. And that went for everything. It was everything from recycled metals to fixing your pots and pans to sewing up clothes. They had those guys that were always on the street, men and women that would go around. They had their own calls, so you always knew what was being sold, and you knew where to find them. It was kind of a cool experience. Something that you don't do, at least here, at least in English, not that you would want to do this anyway, but here in the United States, people often, while making fun of someone, or even just jokingly, making fun of like a sibling or a friend, like, oh man, you're so dumb. That's something that you don't do in Latin culture. You don't ever insult, even jokingly, someone's intelligence. It's much more serious and severe than we take it in the United States. But then again, flip-flopping, here, you would never joke about someone's complexion or the way they look. You could say, hey, skinny, or hey, fatty. Whereas flip-flops in Latin American culture, you get pegged with a nickname and you're that for life, and it doesn't rub anyone the wrong way. If you were being described as a missionary, people are like, oh, which one's Elder Hepworth? And I'm like, oh, the skinny one. And it works. No one bats an eyelid at it. Or if you were heavier, like, oh, the fat one. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's him. And like, no one bats an eyelid. So that's kind of a do and don't. You're okay to mention someone's appearance, but you're not okay to criticize their intelligence. Whereas it's kind of flip-flopped here in the United States.
The Peruvian culture is super loving. They're very open, kind people. I mean, granted, you'll find some ornery people, but that's any culture. But as a general population, they're very open and friendly. They are, just because of the Spanish Inquisition, the majority of them call themselves Catholic. There has been like a recent thing where many people have like gotten interested in like evangelical churches, but they are remarkably spiritually sensitive, which is really cool. Cultural do's and don'ts. Well, not eating their food is offensive. So eat their food when they give it to you. Especially because there will be plenty of times when they don't have a lot, but they give it to you. And so I would say also learn how to eat slowly. Eat very slowly so that you don't have to eat 5 portions. Learn how to eat slowly so that you have to leave, you don't have time to eat more. I would say make sure, decide now to love the culture. Because the temptation will always be there to look for the negatives and the differences. But if you decide, if you decide to go in and just love it, it makes it so much easier. If you just accept the fact that there'll be differences, but love the differences, it makes it such a more enjoyable experience, and you're happier. You're definitely happier. You're going to be happier if you're saying, wow, I love this. It's completely different, but I love it, rather than wow, this is different and it's terrible. It's much better to say this is different and I'm learning from it. The best way to get to them is through the family, obviously. If you want to have success with them, you have to go through the family. Just because of the way the working situation is many times the men will not be home when the women are. But if you want to truly help families come into Christ, you have to teach them when the husband's there. We learned that pretty quickly on, that teaching without the husband or teaching without the full family, it just creates problems. It doesn't help anyone, because then someone's coming closer to Christ while the other person has no idea what's going on. And so the family is a big thing. always ask when you're learning the language. Like, don't be afraid to ask people what words mean instead of just using them. Because they, like, Peruvian Spanish is one of, like, the clearest Spanishes that exists in South America, but they also do have their own little slang and stuff, and so it's important to ask what things mean to someone you trust. So probably not a teenage boy, but, like, I don't know, a trainer, maybe like the woman who gives you food, and I don't know, because that'll help you learn and not be offensive.
In their culture, it's really common for them, like if you go into their house, like when you get there, you want to greet everyone that's in the room. So basically, you're gonna go around and shake everyone's hand that's there. Like if you when you go to church as well, everyone that's there in the sacrament or in the cultural hall, you're gonna go and greet every single one of them by hand. And that takes a little while to get used to at first, because we never do that here in the States. It's like you go by and you greet every single person, like by hand, look them in the eyes, say good morning or whatever, and then go on to the next person. I think that's something that's really, I admire about their culture, is that they're really friendly. They know everyone. They kind of respect everyone in that way, where they want to like show them that they're glad they're here and like they respect them. And I really admire that of their culture. So make sure you do that. Don't ever just walk into a room and not shake someone's hand, or shake everyone else's hand except one person. That'd be really, really offensive to that one person. Also, like whenever you go into a house, like we do go to teach someone, they'd always offer us food or something to drink, and we'd accept it. Like, you need to accept it. They'll usually offer you something, and if you reject it, that's also like really offensive. Like, we only reject anything if it was like coffee or something we really couldn't drink. Like, we only got that once or twice. And they'd still be like, oh, so if you can't drink coffee, you want this? And we'd be like, yeah, that's fine. So if you reject something, like, kind of give them an alternative. For like, we said we couldn't drink coffee, so like, do you have herbal tea or whatever we could drink? And so that was something that they're really strict on as well, like offering food. So you never want to reject that. They have like a really heavy respect for their elderly. Like, most people there, their grandparents or their actual parents, when they're elderly, like they come to live with them. So like if my parents were elderly and I was old, I had my job and everything, then I'd start taking care of them and they'd like live with me and stuff. And it's usually if you run into a family that's older, they'll have their actual parents there living with them and they're taking care of them. And I think I respect that as well. It's like, it shows a sign of respect to the elderly and just pays them back for everything that they've done for us. I really like that. And then culturally, like other things they do, they have a lot of dances. Like they'll have a lot of cultural events where they'll do all kind of typical dances of Peru or of Cusco. And those are really cool. They're very colorful. All their dresses, all their typical clothes they'd wear, they're very cool looking. I like how they look, and they have some really, really awesome dances. They actually have a culture, which is really cool, and they are proud of that culture for the most part, to be Peruvian.
I think that our principal culture is the food, and I think that all of the missionaries who are going to missions in Peru, they need to know that Peruvian people love to cook. Peruvian people love to eat different things, different healthy food, and I think, for example, soups. We usually eat soups in Peru, and I know that here many people don't like soup, and it is like just sometimes or for some events. But in Peru, our culture is like always, maybe in the lunch we are gonna eat soup, and after that we are gonna have a meal like rice, potatoes, or meat or chicken. And for example, in my mission, and I think it's a culture from Peru, the people are really happy when you are eating their food. One of my companions from my mission, he told me, I discovered that when people offer you food for the first time when you go to their homes, is because they really trust in you, because they are starting to have confidence in you, because they want to be gentlemen with you, because they are starting to love you, or they are starting to recognize that you are a representative of God. and or you are a missionary. And I think this is one of the principal things. When I was in Cajamarca, people usually gave us too much food, and sometimes it was hard for us. But I try to be gentleman with them, and I try to adjust to their culture as well. And they are really, really lovely people. But this is a great point. I think that every missionary, or most of my companions who were to my mission in Peru, they notice that food is a different thing from Peru. It's a special thing from Peru.
There's a few phrases or things that we might do in America that are not good at all in Peru. So talk with your companion. If there's something that you do that's wrong, she'll help you. There's a few things, hand signs, I guess, that we do for like it's all okay and you shouldn't do that in Peru. You shouldn't toss things to people. If my sister's coming out of the house and she needs the keys, I'll just throw them to her. They don't like that. It's very offensive and very rude. So pick up on those things. They'll be kind to you at first, but make sure you learn them and don't do them again. They'll understand that you're an American and they'll be forgiving, but try to be as much as like a Peruvian as you can. When they give you food or when they offer you something, depending on how much they have, they may be giving you what they were going to eat. So take that into consideration. Some people are extremely poor, and sometimes I would, if they want to give you something, I would say, no, it's okay. Other times I would accept, and honestly, sometimes I would accept because I knew God would bless them so much more for giving you, giving the missionaries something to eat, because it was a huge sacrifice for them. So whatever you eat, whatever they give you, make sure you eat it and be very grateful for it. Some people are much more well-to-do. I had wards where there were lawyers and bankers, and in the same ward there were people with, cardboard houses, or just really poor situations. But if they offer something to you, be very gracious and be very aware of those situations. And again, mostly learn from your companion and try to be as immersed in the culture as you can. If they see that you love Peru and you're trying to be like them, they'll love you back. Even if they don't listen to what you have to say, they'll remember that the missionaries were special people.